Have you been thinking about creating an email newsletter for your business but just don't know how to get started? Or have you started one but haven't been consistent? Then this class is for you. Welcome to How to Create an Email Newsletter for Your Business, featuring Beth Caldwell. Beth is a small business expert, a publicist, and author of the popular book, I Wish I'd Known That, Secrets to Success in Business. She works with small business owners and entrepreneurs to create strategic public relations plans and affordable marketing programs to help them succeed in business. This workshop is creating an email newsletter for your business. Get your pens ready and enjoy the workshop. In this program, you'll get great insight into the importance of creating and maintaining an email newsletter for your business. Now here's Beth.
Well, hi and welcome everyone to the workshop, Creating an Email Newsletter. You know, creating an email newsletter can be a daunting task. We're all so busy already. And to get started with this process, we need to organize our contacts, write up our content, set up an account with an email newsletter program, or learn how to use Outlook. It can be so overwhelming. Most of us already know that keeping in contact with our clients is a great form of customer service, as well as a great networking tool, but we have so much to do already. Great news though, once you get it going, your email newsletter can become a regular part of your business. The trick is to get it going. So let's begin by identifying yourself. Some people are fixing to get ready to get started. You know that a newsletter is a great idea. You've begun to collect some ideas for your newsletter content, and you've compiled a few of your contacts' email addresses. You may have told some people that you'll be sending them a newsletter soon. Now, warning, this stage has been known to last up to 3 years. Person 2 would be an in process. You've assembled your contact lists, and perhaps you've even started a free trial from one of those newsletter services, or you're using Outlook. You may be sending regular emails to your database, but they're not consistent. Person 3, you're set up, you've been sending some email newsletters, but you need to do some polishing. Your content needs to be refreshed and polished up and a little bit more professional looking. Well, good news, no matter what stage you're in, today is going to be time for all of us to get started, because the sooner you begin your e-newsletter, the sooner you will see results. Now, why do you want to do an email newsletter? Well, there's probably 101 reasons. But here are my favorites. First, your newsletter content can't be posted on the web. Posting on the web is the fastest way to turn your email content into search engine results. Email newsletters can get you easy email referrals. If you send a tip to a contact that you met at a trade show, and they realize that they're a perfect match for their Uncle Harry or your Aunt Sally, they could forward the email. Free and fast, and you've just been recommended. Much quicker and much more effective than someone passing on your business card or your brochure. Your content can establish you as an expert in your field and as a customer-oriented business. You can also create an instant relationship with a client on your hit lists. A competitor of yours may offer a sale or a special offer, but they can't compete with the relationship. IMT Strategies reported in 2007 that email news campaigns were 10 times more effective than direct mail. Your newsletter will provide an ongoing, non-aggressive tool that enhances your business relationships. It's a great way to upsell, resell, gain referrals from your current clients, because people do business with people they know and like. An email newsletter is a low-cost, very effective marketing tool. Often, when you send an email newsletter campaign, you will remind people of what they need or what they want. This is an instant form of communication that can allow you to earn money even when you sleep. Now, when you're creating your newsletter, many people need to decide: print, email, e-zine, or e-news. You know, every business is different. In general, I recommend that if you have an office where people are walking in, you should provide a printed version of a newsletter. This can be done as often as weekly or as infrequently as annually. Medical offices especially benefit from a printed newsletter because sometimes they have a waiting room with a lot of people in it who are there for a long time. So their waiting room should be well stocked with their information rather than other people's. If you don't have an office, then an email newsletter is a must. And a printed version can be mailed to clients if you like, but it's not always necessary. It's a good rule of marketing to touch your clients with a variety of marketing tools. A printed newsletter is less expensive than TV advertising and more affordable than personalized cards. It depends on where you are in your business and what you can handle. You should review your marketing tools each quarter, the same as you review your budget, to assess what's working and what's not, and what you can afford, time and money, plus what can be improved upon, or outsourced. If you rely on your website to generate business, then an email newsletter sign-up box is a fantastic way to keep in touch with visitors. In fact, I think it's an absolute must. I like to tell people, think of your website as your store in the mall. People come in, look around, they like what they see, they might make a mental note to check back with you when they need what you have to offer. If they share their contact info with you, you now have the opportunity to follow up with them and let them know you're the right person for the job. So pretend that your website is just like your store in the mall. When people come in and walk in and look around, you want to make sure that they remember you when it's time to come back. Now I want to make a certain note here because some people get confused. E-zine is just a shortcut for electronic magazine. E-news or e-newsletter means electronic news. They're all the same. They're each a form of electronic or online marketing, and they're all just a part of your overall marketing campaign. You will want to have a strong marketing database. This is a part of your business inventory, and it's priceless. There are several ways to build your lists, and there is also a certain etiquette to follow. You can begin your email marketing campaign with as little as one person. If you have no one on your list, then set your goal for 25. If you're an established business, begin your database this way. First with current clients, then immediate past clients, your current hit lists. This should be people you already know, your networking partners, and your family and support system. Get in the habit of continually updating and adding to your lists. I try to do this myself each Friday, otherwise the task can become monumental. Once you have a regular newsletter, your list will grow because people will forward your email. You should be offering, as I said before, a sign-in or an opt-in box on your website. You can offer something in order to gain contact information. Whenever you do a speaking presentation or you do an exhibit or a vendor show, always include a sign-up sheet to receive your newsletter. When you meet people at an event or a networking get-together, ask them if they'd like to receive your newsletter. So here are the etiquette rules for building your newsletter lists. First, always have permission. Don't be aggressive or annoying. Don't beg for sales or referrals. Don't send out just sales and specials. Make your newsletter something worthwhile for the clients or the potential clients to read. Never share your lists. Be considerate, timely, and helpful with your content. Don't send more than 4 emails a month. Always be careful with etiquette because the last thing you want is for people to block you. You want to always be at the top of their mind, but in a good way, not in an annoying way. Okay? Next, we're going to choose a newsletter service. This is a very important decision, and there are a variety of options. Today, I'm going to tell you just about a few. There are several benefits to using a newsletter service, including tracking, easy content management, support, and what's really great is an online copy of your database. Let me talk about these a little bit. Some people hesitate to use a newsletter service because they say, I have Outlook or I have all of my people in an Excel spreadsheet. Well, that's okay and it's all right to start that way, but the benefits are, first of all, having that database online is really great because what if something happens to your computer? What if something happens to Excel? What if your computer gets a virus? That list is as priceless as your inventory. So it's very, very important that you have a backup copy of it. Having that online is great. It's an easy way for you to maintain control and keep your contacts organized. Secondly, another very, very important thing about using a newsletter service is the tracking. And that tracking is very valuable, especially, first of all, it's going to tell you what email newsletters are most read, which ones you get most of a response to. So that'll help you to be able to tailor your email newsletters in the future so that you know that you'll have successful results. But another thing that people often don't think of is that what if you decide to sell your business? You know, looking at the results of your email newsletters is a very great gauge for someone when they're thinking about purchasing a business. So they can see that, you know, the average email open rate is maybe 31%, but your email open rate might be 42%. That's very impressive. How many people are on your list, how often they read it. This is really good information to have. For the price of a newsletter content service, it's really, really worth it to have. Now, there are several that you can look into. We'll have this available in your handout, so you don't have to go looking these up right now. AWeber has been along for a very long time. I believe they were the first ones who offered this type of a service. Constant Contact, probably the most well-known. They do a lot of advertising, and a lot of people have and use Constant Contact. GoDaddy has a service. If you have your website with GoDaddy, you can check into their newsletter service. One that I like, especially for beginners, is My Newsletter Builder. It's a very small company in Virginia, and they give really personalized help. When you sign up for your free account with them, they actually call you on the phone and walk you through your first newsletter. Many people use a shopping cart service, and if you have a shopping cart service, check that out because they often, most of the time, include a newsletter service. You want to be careful not to be duplicating and paying for products that you already have. So also check with your own website service. Now the one that I use, it's my favorite, just personal preference, I use iContact. I like iContact because it's very, very simple to maneuver. You don't have to know how to write HTML. I like to use a lot of pictures in my newsletters, and they allow you a lot of room for pictures, and I really like that. So I use iContact. You want to play around with them, try a couple of the free trials, see the one that works for you the best. Many of you listening to this use a virtual assistant, so certainly allow the virtual assistant to use the one that she is the most comfortable with. Okay, we're going to talk now about newsletter styles. So people often ask me, what's the difference between text or HTML? Well, the difference is basically a personal choice. A text newsletter would be just what it sounds like, just text, no pictures, no fancy fonts, no pretty colors. Some people will choose when they sign up for your newsletter to receive it in text. You know, there are some people even today who still don't have high-speed internet. They're going to want to receive just a text newsletter because it takes time to download the special fonts and the colors and the pictures. Now, an HTML newsletter, those are the ones that I like to use because they allow you to have photos and live links and pictures. A text-only newsletter will just have that text. There are some samples in your handouts. In 2003, a research company in California, which is called Forrester Research, predicted this. By the year 2005, text email will seem as archaic as black and white TV. HTML newsletters are read more often, have a higher click-through rate. HTML photos, which I'm just going to say from now on, I hate using that word HTML. I just say bright, colorful newsletters because that's really what they are. The bright, colorful newsletters are read more often. Like I said, they have a higher click-through rate. They also allow for a brand connection. So if you have a logo and your logo or your company message right at the top, you put that on every single one, it's going to begin to have people recognize your brand connection and your personal relationship. If you don't believe me, try this experiment. Send a photo of your pets, your vacation, or small adorable children, even if they're not your kids, and you're going to see what happens. You're going to get a tremendous response on that newsletter. So you need to figure out which style you prefer. Importantly, which style you think your clients will prefer. If you're using a service and you prefer text, do a test and see which ones are open more. You can send one in text and one in bright, colorful pictures and look at your clients and see which ones are being open more, and that's a really good gauge. Are you ready to create? This is my favorite part. Let's create your newsletter. First, you want to name your newsletter. Similar to naming your business, you know, your newsletter doesn't have to be the same name as your business. You want to pick something that's really catchy, very eye-catching, a little bit compelling, will make people curious to want to open that email. We're all getting so many emails. That subject line is a source of competition. So name your newsletter. Now, you can always change the name of your newsletter, just like you can always change the name of your business. But it's a really good idea to pick something, think it over. Don't be too impulsive on that. For example, with my women's organization, it's Pittsburgh Professional Women. Instead of calling my newsletter Pittsburgh Professional Women January News, I call it Clever Connections, because that's really a description of what we do in our organization. We cleverly connect women to support one another in business. I love the name Clever Connections. The way that I came up with that name is I just started writing down, and I do this with a lot of things that I create. Just start writing down the descriptive words of what you do or what you endeavor to do, and you'll begin to see some words that stand out. The name of your newsletter, just like the name of your business, should really reflect who you are and what you do. Like I said, you can always change it later, but it would be much, much better if you had a name and a purpose and some continuity. You also want to define your purpose. So you want to name your newsletter and then define the purpose. Usually you'll use that name in the subject line and the purpose in the headline. For an example, my newsletter for Pittsburgh Professional Women, Clever Connections. It might say Clever Connections, News for May. And then the opening, when they open the newsletter, they'll see my logo, Pittsburgh Professional Women. And right under that, I always have the same words. We help business women succeed. Says exactly what type of content they're going to find in that newsletter. And it's going to tell them if it's something they want to continue reading. So that's what happens when you name your newsletter and define your purpose. Two very important steps that have to take place before you begin creating. Next, you want to create your content and save your template. I really recommend that you send the same sort of newsletter every time, that you always have your company name or your company logo or your mission statement in the same place, that you always have your layout in the same way. There are several options that you can choose from when doing this, but I think it's a really smart idea to use the same layout over and over again. First of all, it's easy and familiar to your clients, and secondly, it's easy and familiar to you when you're creating. You simply create it the first time, and then as you reuse that same template, you're just changing out the texts. So you want to create your content, kind of have a vision of how you want that newsletter to look every single month, save that template, and then email it to your client list and repeat on a very predictable schedule. You want them to get in the habit of expecting to hear from you. All right, let me give you some tips on this part. First, assume that the person reading this knows absolutely nothing about you, nothing about your business, and make sure that when they're done reading, they know exactly who you are and what you offer. You want to aim for 25% self-promotion and 75% useful content. Let me explain what I'm talking about there. 25% wants of promotion for yourself. 25% of here are my services, here are my products, here's what I can do for you. 75% useful content, ideally around what you do. So if you're in the healthcare profession, useful content would be things about people's health, tips on getting enough rest, tips on getting enough sleep, tips on eating all your vegetables, whatever they would need. A lot of times you can say the top 3 things or the top 10 things or the top 7 things. Useful content, something that they can take away with that they didn't know before. On the other hand, I notice that people do this a lot. They'll give 100% useful content and they forget to promote their products and services. And I'm guilty of that. I used to do that in the beginning. So I see people tend to take it one way or the other. They are just selling their product and they're not giving any useful content, or they're giving tons of useful content and forgetting to sell. So aim for a 75-25. Keep your newsletter free of clutter and free of too much text. Have you noticed that people are getting a lot of emails and they will tend to skim? What I see is if you have too many words, they're not going to read it because they don't have time. So I recommend that you have pictures, text, make them in large, easy to read fonts, and no clutter, not too many pictures, certainly no ads, especially at the top, and easy to read, and especially easy to skim. Let me give you some ideas for content that you can put in your newsletter. Think of this. What are the top 5 questions that your new clients always ask you? When somebody who is just getting ready to hire you sits down with you for a consultation, what is it that they really want you to do for them? What are the top 10 problems that you solve for people? Has anything in your industry been featured in the news lately? Those are always great ways, great little things to put into newsletters. You can also work with a non-competitive buddy who's also in search of your target market. I call that complementary marketing. For example, a travel agent and a florist. They're not really competitive, but they're looking after the same client. They both really want to get to brides. A realtor and an insurance agent. These people are complementary and non-competitive. You can hook up with somebody like that, especially if you don't like to write, and you can take turns writing content for one another. So obviously, a realtor giving advice on insurance and tips on assurance is going to be very, very helpful. And the other way around, an insurance agent can give tips on finding a good realtor. I think that would be really appreciated in that market. So find a non-competitive buddy, take turns writing content for one another. That'll really take some stress off of you and help you to come up with some really quality content for your newsletter. Here's another idea. You could review a book, a gadget, or even an event on your topic. You could interview an expert, somebody in your field. Suppose you have a daycare center. You could interview a pediatrician or an author who wrote a book on childcare, or you could use an interview and include that, or use an article of a well-known expert in the field. All of that is great content. Here's some ways, some great sort of headlines if you need some creative ideas. 3 steps to, saving money or looking great. I always tell people if they're kind of short on ideas, go to the grocery store and just stand in the checkout line and look to your left and look to your right. It's always the same thing on the covers of the magazine. How to look better, how to save money, how to have great sex, how to feel great, look great, be happy. Every single month, it's the same headlines over and over again. They still continue to sell over and over again. So think of that type of thing. People want to feel good. So you want to give them information that makes them feel good. So 3 steps to having fun with your kids this summer. 3 steps to feeling healthy and great. 5 mistakes that people make when paying their bills, or 5 mistakes that people make when creating an email newsletter. That would be a good one, wouldn't it? Okay, another thing that people use sometimes is a question of the month. Now, I find this is really particularly helpful if you are in an industry that maybe isn't really well known. Something that's maybe newer or new age, something that is not familiar to everyone. Maybe you're in the arts, maybe you're into holistic things, and maybe that's just not common knowledge to everyone. I have a client that is a psychic medium. That can be really intimidating to some people. Some people are interested in it, they're a little nervous about it. So we created for her a question of the month. Now, we didn't ask people to write in the question of the month. We just said, hey, what are the questions that you get all the time? We came up with 10 or 12 questions. We wrote them out the same as she would answer them, and we just took turns rotating those questions. If you have a larger business, or even if you have a small business with just a few employees, you can feature an employee of the month. People really like to make those connections and know who they're dealing with. I always recommend that for an insurance firm. And testimonials are also very, very good things. Again, you don't want to be too brash, but sometimes it's really good to include a great testimonial. I have a client that sells windows. They manufacture and make windows. They put a testimonial in every single newsletter right at the bottom left. And you know what's happened? They've been sending that newsletter out. They do a print version, which they have in their store, and they do an email version. It's the exact same thing. Do you know people are now vying to get in to that testimonial page? They want to have their picture taken in there. They want the company to come out to their house and take a picture of them standing next to their windows with a really big smile. I'm sure that the owner never expected that would happen. That's been a really nice side effect to that thing, and it's really great. As I said before, personal information can include, things about you and your family, your pets, your vacation, new babies, weddings, anniversaries. Some people like to include humor, just keep it very tasteful. And recipes, upcoming workshops. Maybe they're not workshops that you hold, but they're workshops that your ideal client would be interested in. Those are very, very helpful things to include in your newsletter. Now, some people want to know what to track. I always tell people, don't even worry about tracking your newsletter results until you've been sending a newsletter consistently for at least 3 months. In addition to that, don't bother tracking your newsletter until you're sending it to 100 people. You're going to get a better gauge of what's going on when you have 100 or more people on your email newsletter lists. So once you've been sending your email newsletter for at least 3 months, you have at least 100 people on your list. Begin to track the following. First of all, how many openings? How many people are actually opening that newsletter? That's really important. If you use a newsletter service, they're going to tell you exactly the percentage, and they're going to put it up in a pretty little pie chart. Remember that the average is about 30%. So if you're doing over 30%, you're doing well. If you're doing under 30%, you probably want to tweak something. And very likely it would be in your subject line, the title of your newsletter. You also want to be very careful to track the number of bounces. And a bounce is simply a newsletter that did not get through to that person's email address. In some cases, it's because the person changed their email address. Sometimes it's because their email address was full, their account was over quota or something like that. Sometimes you just mistyped in the address and you need to change that. Now that's very important. Obviously, for one reason, you want them to receive the newsletter. But secondly, if you have too many bounces, then your email is going to be more likely to be flagged as a spam email. So you want to be careful. And if you see that emails are bouncing, your newsletter service will usually send you a message. You had 8 or 13 or 12 emails bounce. Go in there, try to fix that right away. If you can't figure out what the problem is, delete that from your lists. Hopefully you have the business card of the person and you can call them and make sure that you can verify their email address. Another thing that's really important to track is the number of click-throughs, also called conversions. That would be people who went from the email right to your website or to the website that you were trying to send them to. Often in my email newsletter, I will have several links to different things. Maybe I've shared a great article, but just the first paragraph of it, and they'll click through to that website to see the rest of the article, to read the rest of it. So when you see a high click-through on that, you know that people were really interested in that subject. Of course, you want the highest click-through to be right to your website and hopefully to buy your product or service. Something that you won't see a lot of because people don't do it kind of the way they're supposed to would be the number of forwards. When you use a newsletter service, they want your readers to go down to the bottom of the email newsletter, and there's a little button that says forward this email to a friend, and they want your reader to put in their friends' names and email addresses, and in that case then these can be tracked and we can actually see so-and-so referred a client to you and they signed up for your newsletter list. I find that most people do not use that service. They will simply just forward your email to their friends. They won't go through the service. And how you'll realize that somebody has done that is when you read your number of opens report. You might have Susie Smith open the email 37 times. Well, you know, Susie probably didn't read that 37 times. She obviously forwarded it to a group of her friends. So in that case, you can see that Susie appreciated your content, but you just don't know who she sent it to. But that's something good to keep in mind. Also, you want to keep, and hopefully this will be very low, would be the number of complaints. Occasionally you'll get somebody, even if they've signed up for your newsletter list, even if they went to your website, they'll mark you as a spam. Hopefully that will be a very, very low number. I have several thousand people on my list. My complaint rate is like 0.02%. So one person at some time in the past year. And sometimes that happens by accident. People do occasionally remove themselves from your mailing list. And, you know, don't ever, let me just put an aside here, don't ever get offended or hurt feelings when that happens. Because remember, we're all getting so many emails. Sometimes people just don't have time to read them. They might unsubscribe and accidentally unsubscribe and report it as spam. So sometimes that's not even intentional. So be aware of the unsubscribe rate. If your unsubscribe rate is over 2%, you're doing something wrong. You need to fix it. If you don't know what it is, you want to get a second opinion, get a buddy or a coach to help you figure out what that is. But you want to keep that very, very low. So keep an eye on that number of complaints, and hopefully that is not something that you want to worry about. Now, as you're tracking these things, this is going to help you to learn about your readers' interests. Pay special attention to the dates and times that emails are open. You can get that in the report too. Now, if you have one email that just only 10% of people read, that's happened to me before, take notice of what day and time you sent that email. That may just be the problem. It could also be the subject line, but very often it's the date and time that you sent that email. Now, also look, if you have an email newsletter that's been forwarded much more at a higher rate than the other ones, try to figure out what it was that people liked about that. Of course, if you have an email newsletter that you sold a lot of product, figure out what you did there and keep doing it over and over again. Let me give you a little tip about sending your email newsletters. I'm sure that everybody listening to this and everyone attending this workshop receives email newsletters. Have you ever noticed that some of them come at midnight? If you're a night owl like me, every now and then at midnight I'll get 3 or 4 emails, and they're always emails that I've subscribed to. When that happens, it doesn't feel as personal, don't you think? So when you're setting up your email newsletter and you're using your service, it will ask you what date and time do you want this email sent. And I always pick a time like 9:16 a.m. or 2:14 p.m. So people actually think that I just hit send on my computer, even though for real I may have written that email newsletter 2 weeks prior. So don't ever just have them automatically go at 12 midnight or automatically go at 6 a.m. It makes it more personal to have it come at a more realistic time. Now, I have a $10,000 question for you. People ask all the time, why does one subject line work better than another subject line? For example, why would somebody read Clever Connections, May 2009, instead of Pittsburgh Professional Women News You Can Use 2009? Why do people open some and not the other? You know, it's the $10,000 question. And you know what the truth is? Who knows? We don't really know why people open some things or read some things more than others. What we need to know is what they do open and continue to do that over and over again. And I tell you this because I don't want you to spend too much time trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. Use the tools, figure out what works, continue to do it over and over again, and don't worry about what isn't working, because we don't have time for that, do we? I want to give you 2 little bonuses to this workshop. I'm going to give you some techy terms. I just want to go through and explain them to you. They are in your PDF handout. But we already talked about bouncing. When the email bounces, that means that your newsletter, for some reason or another, did not go into their inbox. Now, there are 2 types of bouncing. A soft bounce means that that person is over their quota, or it could be that they didn't pay their bill and their service is temporarily terminated. Now, a hard bounce would mean that that email address is no longer current. CTR, that's something you'll see in your reports, and all that simply means is click-through rate. And that's, as we discussed before, the number of people who actually opened your email and click through to visit your website. CVR stands for conversion rate. Now that's a little bit different than click-through rate, because the conversion rate means the people who have visited your site and they've made a purchase. We want lots of CVRs. A house list, also called a retention list. This is just another name for your database, or what I call your contact list or your email list. Now this list is always made up of contacts that you've collected yourself and people who have given you permission to contact them. You can use this list to cross-sell, upsell, and to continue to build your relationship. Now, this list is a very valuable asset to you. And as I said before, it's as important to your business as your inventory. You want to protect this list, never share it, never sell it. Never lose it. Don't ever lose it. That's really, really important. Okay, your open rate, simply the number of emails that were opened in comparison to the number of emails that you sent. You want to shoot for at least 30%. Opt-in. Opt-in is something that you will see commonly in email newsletter reports. And this is when someone visits your site and opts in other words, signs up for your email newsletter. Sometimes a contact service will ask you if you want a double opt-in, and what that means is when somebody goes to your website, they put in their first name and their email address, and then the newsletter service will email them and ask them to verify. You've probably done that several times. When an email comes to you into your inbox and it says, somebody visited this website and they asked to receive this newsletter. If this was you, click here. That's simply called a double opt-in. That sort of prevents spamming companies from stealing people's emails and signing people up for email newsletters that they really don't want to receive. Opt-out then would be a way that someone could unsubscribe from your email newsletter. An opt-out box is required by law to be at the bottom of every one or somewhere. Usually you see it at the bottom, somewhere in that email newsletter. And it'll say safe unsubscribe or click here to discontinue receiving this newsletter, something like that. That's an opt-out option. Okay, I'm sure you've heard of spam. We've all heard of spam. Another word for spam in the technical terms is UCE, and that stands for unsolicited commercial email. We want to stay away from those. And a whitelist, sometimes people will say, well, let me put you on my whitelist. What a whitelist means is people that have very sophisticated spam filters can whitelist your email address so that you will never go into their spam. So if you're somebody that they really want to read the emails, and sometimes because of too many links or too many photos, your email would go into spam, they can whitelist you in their email service so that your emails never go into spam. And that's called whitelisting. I want to give you a couple of additional resources. I find a lot of people really hate to write, and that's something that comes easy to me. So it was sort of hard for me to figure out why people didn't want to write, and I realized, everybody just doesn't have the same gifts and skills and likes that everyone else does. There's a wonderful resource. It's called ARA, and it stands for, I don't know what it stands for actually, but the website address is aracontent.com, and again, this is in your handout. This is a really great website, and I used to use it when I published a magazine all the time. They offer free articles that you can use as quality content, and all that they ask is that you give them credit for the article. You can go in there and you can find articles as little as 100 words up to 700 words, and they're very, very quality. Also, if you're a writer, you can submit your articles to ARA, which it's another whole subject for another different workshop. A great tip that I have for you is go to either American Greetings or Hallmark or any of whatever your favorite greeting card company is. They have, because of the business they're in, they of course want to sell cards for every single holiday. I have found them to have the most comprehensive listing of holidays anywhere. And if you're looking for a good reason to send a newsletter, just go to their website. You'll find out all kinds of holidays to celebrate everything. And ideally, you're going to want to find something that matches your business. I use iStock Photo. Some people use clipart.com. I like to use real photos, and I use iStockPhoto.com, and that's a place where you can purchase photos pretty affordably. They range from $3 to $22. You can get a nice quality photo. It's possible that you might see that photo somewhere else in a magazine or on a billboard, but not likely because it's a worldwide site. So you can check on there for some great quality photos. One thing you don't want is just to use the typical Microsoft Word art or clip art, because everybody's seen that. You want to be a little bit different than that, look a little bit more professional. I want people to not look homemade, but you don't have to hire an expensive graphic artist to do this. These resources will help you do that. E-zine articles are a simple other way for free article content. There's a website called ezinearticles.com. Very simple to ARA contact, very similar to ARA contact. And it's a place where experts and professionals will write articles in hopes of getting some publicity. The content is free. You just have to credit the author. Oh, here's one I love. It's My Live Signature. And if you're on my email newsletter lists, you'll have seen a sample of My Live Signature. I love My Live Signature. You can just go in there and create really nice handwritten signatures. People think that they're really your signature. You can always hire a graphic artist to scan your signature and set it in there, but mylivesignature.com is free. Now, if you need more resources, you can go to my website, which is iwishidknownthat.com. www.iwishidknownthat.com. Click on resources and you'll find a lot of great material for helping you to build your email newsletter list, your content, and lots of other things that will help you in your business. I hope you enjoyed this workshop, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
We hope you've enjoyed this workshop and that you'll begin creating your email newsletter right away. Beth is passionate about keeping business owners up to date with the latest tools, techniques, and strategies for success. She's the founder and host of the Monday Morning Mastermind Program, a convenient mastermind program for busy entrepreneurs that meets by teleconference for 20 minutes every Monday. For more helpful workshops, business tips, and more on the Monday Morning Mastermind Program, visit iwishidknownthat.com. Thanks for listening.